Alright, so in this week's guitar lesson, we're going to be talking about harmony and how you can harmonize when you improvise, and it's not as difficult as you might think. In fact, we're not even really going to be talking about scales, and I'm going to mention it in a few spots, but we're going to be focusing on playing chord shapes. Even though we're not actually playing full chords, we're going to be talking about them, and all of these little harmonies are coming out of basic chord shapes that you already know. And so we're going to break this down over the course of 2 videos. In this video, we're going to go through the first half. If you'd like to learn the second half and download the tablature for this lesson, as well as access the on-screen tab viewer, which is interactive, it'll allow you to slow down playback and loop sections and really learn how to play the entire composition that I played in the intro. You can get that by going to activemelody.com, go to the weekly lessons page, and do a search for EP456. Okay, so this little composition we're going to be learning is a standalone composition. You don't need a jam track, and it is blues in nature. It's got a bluesy vibe, but don't let that run you off. I say that because every time, it seems like lately as I tend to do a lot of blues stuff just because that's where my heart is. But when I do these, a lot of times people will say, you do too much blues. I want to hear more country, or I want to hear more of this or that. Well, just know that you can take these principles and apply them to anything. So these aren't limited principles to blues. It just happens to be a format that we all can relate to. It's predictable, and so that's why I do a lot of things in that style. But anyway, just keep that in mind. Keep an open mind. These are principles. You can apply them to heavy metal if you wanted. So the song is in the key of A, and even though there's no chords behind it or no jam track, the implied chords are an A, a D, and an E. That would be your 1, 4, 5. And I don't play any scales, and I don't play any chords. Everything you're hearing is just harmonies. They're pretty much harmonized thirds for the most part. But they're harmonies on 2 strings, and so you're playing 2 notes at once. Now it's not always a harmonized third. There are times when I sort of break from that, but it's kind of got that vibe. So let me just give you, before we jump into the specifics of the lesson of the song composition, let me just give you what an idea of what I'm talking about when I'm talking about playing out of chord shapes. So the first chord we're going to look at is our A chord. That's where you bar in the 5th fret, and these 3 fingers are making up the E shape. So you think of an E down in first position. If you were to bar here and play that, you'd be playing an A chord. This is all covered in the Cage system. If you're familiar with the Cage system, awesome. If you're not, I have a course on that, which you can access as a premium member at activemelody.com. You just click on the Start Here button that you'll see at the top, big blue button, and you can get into the little courses area. And so there's a course on that. Okay. I'm going to assume we know what we're talking about. A chord. Now look at this. Watch this. I'm going to take that chord, and I'm going to play strings 1 and 2. I'm going to play strings 2 and 3. I'm going to play strings 3 and 4. 4 and 5. You see what's going on? Already a light bulb has illuminated out there for somebody. I'm taking the chord, and I'm just taking 2 notes out of the chord, and I'm kind of sliding into them, obviously, but I'm playing harmonies when I do that. Those are harmonized thirds when you play them out of the chord like that. And that's out of this shape. What if I played the A chord down here using the A shape, down first position? Same thing, right? What about the D shape? Still an A chord, but we're playing the D shape now. Now I broke from it there, but you get the point, right? So I'm taking these chord shapes, and I'm just kind of playing 2 of the notes out of the chord. Now I'm going to mix some other things in with it, but that's the gist of it. That's like the spine of what we're talking about. If you understand that, you'll be able to follow along and play these harmonies and work them into your own playing. That's the real value add of this, is learning how to not just memorize this song, but work this stuff into your own playing. All right, let's take a listen to the first part that we're going to learn, and then we'll break it down. All right, so here's what we're going to learn. So we're going to start here. Think of your A chord using the E shape, and we're going to take strings 3 and 4, and we're going to start there with those 2 strings, downstroke with the right hand. We're going to slide it down, and then as I come back, I'm going to hit the open 5th string as well, which is your A note. So it goes like this. And the reason I did that is so that A note can ring out and I can play some other things. So it's like having a bass player that just, you know, thumped a bass note for you, and now you can improvise on top of it. That's why, and that's also why I picked the key of A, because I've got my open 1 chord, my open 4 chord, and my open 5 chord. Right? Your A, D, and E are all open strings. That's why you hear so much blues in the key of A. So we have this so far. Now I'm going to come down to this A, play strings 3 and 4. I'm just borrowing the first 4 strings on the 2nd fret. And then we're going to play strings 2 and 3, also in that A chord. And then we're going to play this. Now I'll explain this in a minute, but it's middle finger on the 3rd fret 2nd string, ring finger on the 4th fret 3rd string. So we have... Now what this is this is a harmonized third as well, and this is part of the A major scale. I said I wasn't going to talk about scales, but this is the one little spot that I am. I'm harmonizing the major scale, and an easy way to do that, coming from this chord shape, working our way up to this chord shape, right? We're going to connect these 2 chord shapes with this little pattern. We've got strings 2 and 3 here on the 2nd fret, and then we're going to go into this pattern, which we just learned, and then we can slide that up 2 frets, and that puts us in position to play the A chord using the E shape. And there's also an intermediate, and there's also an in-between step, which is right there. Now I've talked about this little harmony quite a bit, but this is just the major scale. That's the A major scale. We're harmonizing on our way up. But you don't have to know all that. For now, you just need to know this. Okay? Now after that, watch this. Okay, so we're coming up here, sliding up to what would be in our E shape now, right? Same little fingering there, but we're sliding up to middle finger on the 5th fret 2nd string. And then watch this. So now I slid up to here where I've got both fingers in the same fret on the 7th fret. And then we come back to this position. And then I concluded with strings 1 and 2 on the 5th fret. They're in that chord, right? So is this. Now this is not in the chord, but it is in the major scale that's being harmonized. And what you need to know, you have to remember this, is off of this chord shape, you've got this. Strings 2 and 3. You've got this. That would be like your 4 chord, right? And then you can go back to it. And just that right there. You can just work that into leads. You can work that into rhythms. There's a lot of value in just strings 2 and 3 out of those 2 chord shapes. So from the beginning then, it all makes sense now, right? I hope it does. We're just playing an A chord, an A chord, and an A chord, but we're kind of dancing around those harmonized thirds. Now after that, I came up into the D shape and went just strings 1 and 2 out of that D shape. That's up here on the 9th fret, string 1, and then the 10th fret, string 2. Slide into it though. Go 1/2 step down. And then watch this. That's just the notes right out of the chord. So we go to the A chord here, and then we go strings 1 and 2, 2 and 3, 3 and 4. Right? All right, so from the beginning we have... Okay, now the song's about to go to the 4 chord, and what I played here goes... Let's learn that. So it starts with this. And this would be middle finger on the 7th fret 1st string, ring finger on the 8th fret 2nd string. And I slide into that. I'll explain this in just a second, but we're going to start there, and then we're going to switch to this pattern, where I've got 1 on the 5th fret 1st string, 1 on the 7th fret 2nd string. Take that same shape, go down 2 frets. Okay, and then we're going to come all the way down to an open 2nd string with 1st fret 1st string, interesting, and then a D7 chord. So that leg goes like this. Now what is this? Somebody's asking that, and that's a good question to ask, because that sounds different than the major scale. It's not in the major scale, but if I were to play, I don't want to lose you, but I'm just going to give you the quick overview of what that is. If I were to play Mixolydian scale, but harmonize it, that's where that's coming from. So that's a harmonized Mixolydian scale. Mixolydian scale is the same as your major scale, except you flat the 7th. So you take that flatted 7, and you can hear that in there. That's one of those notes is the flatted 7. That's why that sounds like that. So you don't have to harmonize just the major scale. You can harmonize minor scales, any scale you can harmonize. And you know, there's different techniques. I didn't want to get too into the weeds with what's going on there, but when we're doing these notes, these are called harmonized thirds. And what that means is you take one of the notes from your major scale, and then you go up 3 steps in the major scale. So if the major scale is like this, you go, if we started with that note and we wanted to find the harmony for that, we go up 3. So you go 1, 2, 3. So you put this note with the original note. That's a harmonized third. That's where the third comes from. You can have harmonized thirds, harmonized sixths. There's different styles of harmony. But the general rule is if you have 2 strings that are just one on top of the other like that and you're harmonizing, that's generally a harmonized third. If you've got a string in between them like this, so I've got the second string, nothing is being fretted there, that would be more of a harmonized sixth. That's the general rule. It's not always the case, but that's how I kind of think of it. It's an easy way to categorize them. Now we're to the D7, and then I went. Okay, so after I played the D7, I came up into this position. Now somebody out there, you should pause the video and just figure out, okay, we're playing the 4 chord, so that would be a D chord, right? So how does this harmony fit into a D chord? You should be able to pause the video and figure this out, or maybe you don't even need to pause the video. This is the top part of the D chord using the A shape. So it's kind of the same thing we've just done, you know, we played the A chord down here. We're playing the A chord shape here. We're playing a D chord. And if I play strings 1 and 2, that's what that looks like. So in my head, after I played the D7, I wanted to come into this D shape up here, or this D chord up here. And that also allows me to go. And so I keep this shape here, and I let my pinky come up to the 8th fret, first string, then the 7th fret, and then off. And this would be, when I'm up here, that would be like playing a D7 chord. Think of your A7 chord in first position. If you take that D triad there, and you stack that note on top of it, you've got a D7. And so that's why that works, or that's why that has a bluesy sound, because we're playing that dominant 7. If you notice a little rattling here, it's this guitar. It sounds great when it's plugged in, but this mic here is probably picking up some of this pick guard rattling. Sorry. So okay, so we have from the D. Then we come back to the A. And so this is the same thing we've just done. I'm just sliding into that little A chord there, playing strings 2 and 3. Well, actually, when I first slid in, I played 5, 4, 3, and 2. And then went to strings 2 and 3 again, same shape that we've done before, but watch this. This time we go. Ah, see, it sounds different. Remember the first time we came up to here, which was the A shape up here, or the A chord up here. But this time, if you want it to sound kind of bluesy, don't go all the way when you're doing this little harmony here from the major scale. I got that from Chet Atkins and something that he did, and I just thought that was clever. So that's what's going on there. Then the song goes to the E chord. So I came here, that's 3rd fret, 2nd string, 4th fret, 3rd string, slide into that, and then hit the open 6th string. That's our bass note, right? And then strings 2 and 3 on the 2nd fret, and then just think your E chord like you play normally, and just hammer on the index fingers. That's what's going on there. And then I hit the open 1 string. Now this is something we've already covered, so think about this. This is our E chord, so it's like the E chord shape. So when we were up here, remember we played strings 2 and 3? And then we came up and barred here, kind of like the 4 chord. I'm doing the same thing here. So that would be the E, there's your A, right? Which is the 4 chord of the E. So the only difference is this. And this is going back into that Mixolydian thing. But this is a must know. This is another little takeaway. Anytime you're playing out of this E chord shape, remember this. You've got these 3 things you can do from harmony perspective on strings 2 and 3. You can play that, which is just right in the chord. You can play that, right, which would be like the 4 chord of that chord. And then you can play this, which is the bluesy version. It's kind of like playing the 7, the dominant 7. So you got, right? So that's what I'm doing down here, since I'm playing over the 5 chord. Let me do that again. All right, so that's the E7 chord there. And then we go to the 4 chord. Just played a D7, and then I played this version of a D7. It's the same shape as this D7. You come up here so that your ring finger is on the 5th fret, 1st string, middle finger is on the 5th fret, 3rd string, but your index finger drops down to the 3rd fret, 2nd string. And you can play strings, you can play the open 4th string with it. So you have, and then I just came and hit the A chord, just the A chord using the E shape. And I played that little turnaround so that we could reuse those licks. We've already covered these, right? And so you can use them as a turnaround. And then I went, there's your 5 chord. That's just an E7 chord, but I came a half step up and then played the chord. And I just played the middle of it. Now that's using like what would be like a C7 shape. Think of your C7 in first position, or C chord, and then you add your pinky to it to make it a 7. Same thing, but we're playing it up here. So this note is your E note. And that's really the whole thing. And all these little harmonies are just chord shapes. I'm just pulling them out of chord shapes more than anything. And I'm adding a few things to it. So we got like the A chord down here, but then you add to it this little step here and that step. And then you get to A chord here, and you add to that, and you just kind of keep stacking them and connecting the different chord shapes. So really you've got a chord shape here, one here, and we've just kind of connected them via the major scale and then the harmonized thirds. Well, that's what we have for this first part. I'll back up and play through it one more time so you have one final slow version of it, and then we'll see you in part 2 where we'll go over the second half.